Mr. Smith.
Hey y'all, what's up? What's good? What's happening? Welcome to the King and Me show. I'm one half of this thing, King.
Hey y'all, it's me, Michelle. How y'all doing?
It is what? Monday what does our calendar say? Monday the 17th? President's Day, right?
President's Day.
Them old people's day. Happy President's Day if you're somebody that's watching from the US and you know what that is. Because people out, we are internationally viewed.
We're
Did you know that?
internationally known on this microphone.
Yeah, I be checking the analytics. So to the people that watch us from South and Central America, hey, we appreciate y'all tuning in.
You know what? Let me scoot back. Okay. I'm sorry.
You're good.
It's always that one person who makes life difficult. Tis me. You're welcome.
You're straight, babe. So
I'm
we
gonna
here
be in the frame.
at the King and Me show. We might need to rotate the camera. Just rotate the camera.
Okay.
I'll get the intro. We
All right.
here at the King and Me show attempt to offer a real outlook on a healthy relationship. Real being relatable,
Entertaining.
accountable.
And loving.
So while we get our video situated here, we want to thank everybody for tuning in. We're streaming on multiple platforms to include TikTok. If you comment on TikTok, we haven't necessarily figured it out yet, so we can't display the TikTok comments, but I am looking at TikTok to see when and if people comment. So salute to y'all for being able to pop in and come in on that way. I would move it the opposite direction.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, the opposite.
That opposite direction.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
All
I'm
right.
telling you, I'm smart. I
Sit
got
your
degrees.
fine behind down.
Oh, okay.
You
Say
still-
less.
But you still
How
gotta
do I answer
rotate it.
that?
You gotta.
You go ahead and talk. I'll handle it. I'll handle it.
All right, here, look, rotate it the opposite
This
direction.
way.
Yeah, yeah.
Cooking with Green.
Cooking with Kaya. Cooking. I saw somebody post on
I
the Cooking with
legitimately
Kaya
don't know
thing.
who that is or what that is because I don't pay attention to like social stuff.
Oh, let's sidetrack a bit.
Oh goodness.
So Cooking with Kaya, she was a young woman
Mm-hmm.
who would cook wearing very seductive type clothing. So she wasn't nude or anything because this is on TikTok, and she would share her recipes
Mm-hmm.
while sharing her body,
Oh goodness.
and she got famous for it and blew up. And some people are like, you don't have to do all of that to.
Well, apparently
You
she
know.
did because that's how she got famous.
And folks are like, well, if some of y'all young women out here knew how to cook, then maybe people wouldn't have trouble with keeping a relationship. It's not hard to get into a relationship, in my opinion.
It's hard to keep it.
It's hard to
okay?
keep a
It's hard to
relationship.
keep it. All right, this is so much better because then they can see our matching hoodies, which are so phenomenal.
No doubt.
Your
Thank you.
Valentine's Day gift.
Appreciate you for sending it up. Let's get something out the way right now. We had the power go out yesterday. And because of that, one of our old smoke detectors in this house needs to be replaced. Been pretty busy today, so haven't had the opportunity not to change the battery because we changed the battery. The changed battery didn't fix it. We think we need to replace the whole unit. So if y'all hear the single mother detector go off, no, you didn't. Should I have called it a single mother detector?
No, all I was going to say is that is an indicator that you were in a black home. That's it.
I heard somebody say that black people growing up are not attuned to the frequency, so that's why they don't hear it as often.
I mean, honestly, that could, you know what? You know what? At this point in life, I'd buy it. I would buy that because I do tune it out after a while. Like I hear it when I first enter a space, and then after that, it's just it is what it is.
Now that I've changed socioeconomical statuses, it bothers me. I could hear it last night all the way upstairs in my
Oh, it's
room.
been beeping that long?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh.
Yeah, so the batteries got changed and the unit's still going off.
Yeah, see, no, I can ignore it after like the first 30 minutes. It's like it never happened.
No BS, and we'll change subjects after this one. There was a study of people in Compton, or it was like a street interview. So not a study, a street interview. And people thought that the sound of it meant that it was working. So there were households, people that grew like from elementary school to high school that grew up in the house with it beeping, and they thought that it not beeping meant that something was wrong with it. That's
what generation?
Insane. The current, so folks in their young 20s now. Wow,
that
right?
Tracks. No, that tracks.
Doomed.
That tracks.
Doomed.
Tracks. Respectfully, of course. That so tracks.
So what do we do over here at the King and Me Show? So if you're new to the channel, I'm King. That is my government name. That's me, Michelle Early. And Michelle and I have been in a relationship for over 2 years.
Ooh, sounds so beautiful when you say it like that.
I would consider both of us content creators, although she's not as much of a content creating person as I am.
I create content. I create written content.
So she has written content. She has a blog called God Happened to Me. If you get a chance to go over there, go and check it out. She's written things back from 2019, 2018?
2017.
2017
is when I started my ministry. Yep.
And when her and I first met, that's how I was able to get to know her.
Because he took time to read through all of my blogs. Like, ladies.
Now, I was happy that you were willing and vulnerable enough to put yourself online like that. And some things, when you're talking about what you're reading and what you're finding online, you have to be careful of, because people will typically only put the good stuff where you put your life up there. So,
and that was my headline. I think it's still my headline on that website. It says, the good happened, the bad happened, but most importantly, God happened to me.
And part of what you had written is going to be what we talked about today.
Okay, let's get into it.
So you had two things that were up there. You talked about something that happened to you involving sexual trauma in your past. And you wrote very candidly about what all of that was. And you also mentioned throughout in various vlogs that you have a couple of diagnoses.
I do, yes.
And one of those diagnoses is ADHD, Attention Hyper Deficit Disorder. Am I saying it right?
Attention hyperactive deficit disorder. Wait, AD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder.
Okay. No, it's all good. Now, you have it diagnosed.
Yes, I have been diagnosed.
What does that mean? What does ADHD mean? How does it show up in people?
So it shows up differently. So one thing to note, it shows up differently in people. It's kind of like what we say in education, that if you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism, because autism does not present the same in every person. Same thing with ADHD. It does not present the same in every person. So ADHD presents differently in an older person from a younger person, and it presents differently in a female's body versus a male's body.
Okay.
It presents completely differently. So for me with ADHD at my age, so I'm 38 and a half years old, for me with ADHD, what it presents as is my inability to focus on any one given thing. So I know studies show that like multitasking, we think we're multitasking and it doesn't really work out well. I like to think I really am a queen of multitasking. Another thing with ADHD for me is procrastination. I get a high off of procrastinating and waiting until the last minute. It really, like my therapist confirmed it, scientifically confirmed it. I get a high from waiting until the last minute to do things. It's something about like that adrenaline rush that kicks in when I'm at the 11th hour for something. And that's linked to my ADHD. Something I learned in the past couple of months is that because I have ADHD, taking a stimulant does not work for me. So coffee, all those types of things that are supposed to keep you stimulated and activated cause the opposite effect within me. They do not cause me to have energy. It does not keep me like I remember growing up, I wanted to love coffee so badly and I would end up drinking so much coffee, and it turns out it didn't work on me at all, and it's because stimulants don't work in people with ADHD. Like it does the opposite, it causes us to crash.
How old were you when you got diagnosed with it?
I was in my 20s when I got diagnosed with it. I'm going to say I give the rough estimate of 25 because I did not get the diagnosis when I lived in Baltimore. It was after I moved out of Baltimore that I got it, and that was 25. So I put it around that time frame.
All right. And to give a little bit more context before we really go into what it's like as somebody that I'm dating you, you have the diagnoses. Are you comfortable sharing what other diagnoses that you have as well?
Oh yeah, because it's public information. Like you said, it's on my website, www.godhappenedtome.com. But the other diagnoses that I have PTSD, so post traumatic stress disorder. I have ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and I have depression, and I also have GAD, which is general anxiety disorder. All things that I have been diagnosed with. They're not just random things that I picked out the blue to associate with.
Thanks for sharing that. Part of after I got divorced and I was back out in these dating streets, you would see a couple of things, primarily on social media, but also presented on people's dating profiles where they would talk about that. And I'd never heard of ADHD or knew what it really meant or anything like that. Anxiety was a word that I was familiar with. And it's my take that I saw a lot of people throwing out these words saying that they have anxiety, saying that they have ADHD. And then if you go, oh, when were you diagnosed? Well, I was never really diagnosed, but I just know that I have it. And I had an issue with that.
No, I get that. Yeah, I can completely get that. And sometimes that's what people do. Like they see something. And don't get me wrong, one of the things that I've never been diagnosed for, but there's kind of a little bit of humor in there, I think I'm a hypochondriac. What is the definition of a hypochondriac? Someone who thinks that they have a whole bunch of things that they don't have.
Okay.
I remember there used to be this show called Popular that was on. It was on like one of those CWs or something like that when we were growing up, when we were in middle school, high school era. And I remember there was this person, I think it was Popular. There was this person who was on the show who got diagnosed with leukemia, and their symptoms were headaches. Like they had headaches and some other stuff, and it couldn't be explained. And they went through all this testing and everything, and it turns out the person on the show had leukemia. And I remember at the time I was having really, really bad headaches. So I just remember thinking, and I didn't say it to anyone, like, praise God. I didn't say it to anyone, but I was like, oh my God, I have leukemia. Like, I just remember thinking that because I am a hypochondriac, which oddly enough is the one thing I have never been diagnosed with, but it's the one thing I think I have. And it's funny because that is the definition of a hypochondriac. But no, all those other things I have been diagnosed with at one point in my life. And it's funny because I didn't receive those diagnoses until I was out of the K through 12 system. And I feel like had I been given those diagnoses when I was in the K through 12 system, things would have looked a little bit different for me. I think my life would have gotten a little bit different. I would have probably been able to get the supports that I needed academically. I'm not going to say I was a horrible student because I was still a gifted. I was a HAL, our equivalent of HAL now, so highly high academic level or whatever it's called, or gifted and talented, whatever. I was really, really good at math. Like math was my thing. I got accepted into Baltimore Polytechnic Institute, which is a magnet school in Baltimore, magnet high school in Baltimore. You had to like not only test into it, but you also had to have great grades to be able to get and stay in there. I was able to get accepted into there, and I was in their A-course math program, which is the equivalent of like honors or something like that now. I was very, very intelligent, specifically only in math. It was like I look back now and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I couldn't focus in the other non-math related classes because it was a class where like you sit and you read, whether it was English, whether it was science, not science, whether it was English, whether it was social studies. It's a reading class.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas math required me to write with my hands. Mandarin or Chinese, when I took it back then, required me to sit and write with my hand. It wasn't just something where I just had to like sit and stare into space. And I learned better in those classes. Now, as an adult, I'm like, that number one shows that I'm a tactile learner, that I learn best from doing, but also that I had the inability to focus and I didn't realize that then.
Stay on that a bit. Think about when you got your diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Was it like eye opening to be able to put a word to something? And then did you ever go back and think about from like 16 and above how much things could have been different had you known at a younger age?
I think greatly. And again, the school that I went to, and it could be just that I was oblivious to things, I don't remember seeing students who had IEPs, so individualized education programs. I don't remember seeing it. It could be that we just didn't have any students with special needs at our school. That could very much be true. Or it could just be that I was completely oblivious because of all the other things going on in my life that I didn't see it. But I feel like, especially now that I'm in education, had I had a 504 back then, which is something that allows you to specifically provide assistance to someone who has a diagnosis, had I had a 504, I probably would have been getting the tutoring that I needed to be able to succeed better in the non-math classes and would have been getting like that focus, that extended time that I needed because I can't sit still and I get easily distracted when noise is occurring around me. I probably would have had a much higher GPA and that probably would have set me up for better success. And maybe I would have had a counselor paying more attention to me so that when I was applying to colleges, or someone would have sat down and better talked to me about like what my future was going to be. I went to a college preparatory school, so if they weren't preparing us to go to a 4-year institution, and heavy emphasis on the 4-year institution, then they prepared people to go off to the military. It's like, in my mind, the statistics were we're preparing like 95% of y'all to go off to a 4-year, and the other 5% we're preparing you to go off into the army specifically. But yeah, we're preparing you to go into the army. I feel like if I had had, that 504, that document, that legally binding document that meant that the teachers had to give extra care to me, I probably would have done better academically and definitely would have done better in college because I remember, I didn't find out about ADHD until after I had gotten my bachelor's degree. And I remember thinking, man, that would have been really helpful to know when I was getting my bachelor's because I struggled in classes there too. Again, I ended up going down the business track, but everything else prior to like those business classes, I struggled in because I couldn't focus, I couldn't sit. But when it got to finance, when it got to talking about finance and accounting and stuff like that, again, things that are very math oriented, I did well in because it allowed me to use a different part of my brain. It allowed me to use my hands and everything like that.
Okay. I'm going to ask you about your relationships once you found out, but I do want to acknowledge Paul. PB is in the building. Shout out to Mr. Paul Bennett, the president of the Bald Headed Brothers Association of America. I might have said that wrong.
Differently every single time, and I love
jack
it
up every single time. All right, but I do want to give a salute to my man PB. Met him in person for the first time when we went up to New York Comic Con. Solid dude.
Nice.
Solid brother. Like there's people that you meet and you instantly know this is a solid dude. Paul's one of those guys.
Awesome.
We also want to get him on the show, looking at having a connect. Maybe sometime, Paul, I need to get with your schedule, man. See how things are going in March for you around this time on Monday. See if we could get you on the live, brother.
Okay, March 17th.
Now, we're talking about ADHD and relationships, specifically around like dating and that like that loving part of the relationships. After you got your diagnoses, babe, did you see a shift in how you handled your relationships or how people were with you in relationships?
No, I'm going to be very honest. The only thing back then, like me laying that all out on my blog, was definitely some adult type stuff, like adult ish that I did. And I did that in the year I was 30 at the time.
So
So,
you were
but
in
it
your
was the
young
year
30s.
I was turning 31.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I started publicly sharing all that stuff. I didn't share that stuff before.
Oh.
So it's like when I met you and we were just friends at that point, I did openly share with you, like you had already seen my website or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
I did verbally tell you what had happened to me as a child and that I had PTSD and stuff like that. So I would tell men, I want to say I didn't start telling men until probably like I was 28-ish was
So
when
a
I
couple of years.
right, but that was when I would lead with that. So I'm meeting someone and I'm like, okay, I want to tell you this, and it would be somewhere around like meetup number 3 or 4 or something like that.
Yeah, definitely not a first date thing.
It's not a first date thing, but I did say it like fairly early on because I wanted people to know. And then after that 30 and a half, that's when I started front loading with that, like much sooner than that. Because on the one hand, I'm like, either it's going to run people away or you're going to stay but be better informed in that moment. So that's the thing. So when I was younger, I either didn't know or I didn't tell people up front.
Okay. When I was dating and people would bring it up, like it definitely wasn't a first date thing, right? But
Right.
there were a couple of things that never really made it past date number 2 or 3 because they would talk about it. And there was this brother that I watched that I follow, Coach Greg Adams. They call him CGA for short. He's got like 10,000 nicknames. The junior college sociologist, the Morpheus
Go,
of the
go,
mating
go, go,
matrix,
go.
uh, the Black Confucius.
Okay, here
All
we
right,
go.
that's it. But one of the things that he talked about was he said, hey, when people are talking about saying that they have all these diagnoses, ask them, when did they get diagnosis? When did they get diagnosed? And I was like, man, that's kind of intrusive. But he had a point to asking that.
Yeah.
So I did it one time. And no, I'm sorry, I did it twice. The first time, the person told me, well, I haven't really actually gotten it, but I just know it. And she never got a call back. And then the second time, it was on the third date of being out with somebody. And we were at a restaurant eating. And she talked about it or whatnot. And I said, oh, that must be pretty difficult for you. When did you get diagnosed? And she said, that's none of your damn business.
Oh,
So I was like,
okay.
all right. So I paid the check, and I kind of reacted like that. I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't let her know that it fazed me. But at that moment,
I'll be honest, her true answer was the same as the first person. I haven't really been diagnosed, but I could just feel it. That's why she reacted that way. But go ahead.
yep. At that moment, when I made it up in my mind, yeah, if you're gonna react like that, then this will not go any further. Like I wasn't even like on the time of all right, well, this could be fun thing because she was my type, but I was like, no, She instantly didn't become my type at that moment because you know me, I don't like attitudes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna catch flack for it. I only got attitude from one skin tone type of people whenever I'd be out. I'm telling you my observations and what occurred with me. I had one time where I was gonna go out with this lady. She had the locks, she had all of the black people rock type shirts on her profile, right? And in the back of my mind, I was like, the only reason why I swiped right on her is because the sister was fine. But I'm looking at everything and I'm like, well, I don't know her, so I'll give her a shot. And we had set up a date to go to Six Flags. And I'd be real curious to know if she ever catches this clip. I had something come up that I had to, it was an opportunity cost type thing. I really wanted to meet her, but I also couldn't turn this thing down. I think I was speaking for something. So I had told her, I said, hey, I hate to do this. I was buying the tickets. All I needed her to do was show up. And I had already bought the tickets. I lost out on the tickets because I couldn't exchange them. but I had to change the date. And I told her that I laid it out. I said, hey, I already got the tickets, yet I can't make this. We're going to need to reschedule. I was willing to get the tickets on the reschedule, the whole nine. I felt like by laying it out that way, that it was a very, thing of letting her know. And I showed proof of everything. She cussed me out immediately. It was like, all these men, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, I just saved myself a whole red flag with this one, right? Because the things were, she was sweet and all this stuff, trying to lure me in with the honey. And then when I actually got close to the honey trap, now she wants to give me all the vinegar. I was trying to make an analogy. It didn't work as well as I thought it was in my head, but y'all know what I'm trying to say. So anyway, I only got that from a certain type or group of women. The other ladies from other areas, and I'm trying my best not to get canceled. I never saw that kind of attitude from. I'm going to be honest. It's interesting that you and I are here today.
Why do you say that?
Know how I've uttered things where I was like, I will never and I won't. I almost said, I'm not going to go back to dating dark-skinned women. That's neither here nor there. Continuing on.
Nothing to do with ADHD. And it's so funny. Like, again, I think back to our most viral clip that has come from one of our episodes. And again, it was a 60-second clip of a whole 60-minute segment. And it was something where we were talking about you abruptly, without warning, changed the subject to something else. I laughed, not because of what you were saying, but because of how abruptly you changed the subject. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, I was like, who has ADHD, me or you? Because I know I have ADHD, but your behavior in that moment was indicative or reflective of someone who has ADHD. And just now, same thing just happened. Same, because you transition. But that's what I mean. Like, ADHD looks different in women and in men, or in female humans versus male humans. It looks different. It presents differently. One of the things for me is that I will easily get distracted. And while you have not been diagnosed, I'm not saying that you do have it. I will say I get easily distracted. And sometimes that can work out for my good. It works out for my benefit. I know that there's certain jobs that I thrive in as far as productivity. I thrive in doing certain things because of my ADHD. And likewise, there's certain fields or jobs that I don't thrive in because I do have ADHD, and like I should never be tasked with doing that type of thing.
In certain circles where guys sit around and talk, men are saying, don't date women with sexual trauma.
Okay.
Men are saying, don't date women that have ADHD because they will use that as an excuse for everything that they do.
Fair, but okay.
Why don't you think it's fair?
Because again, just a lot of people have undiagnosed things. So what you're saying is you're holding something against me because I've received a diagnosis. You're lumping me together with how other people who have received a diagnosis are behaving, not realizing that there are probably so many other people who are just walking around undiagnosed, because Lord knows that people who look like us don't like going to doctors. They don't like going to therapists, so they're not going to receive that diagnosis, but that doesn't mean that they don't have it. So it's like you're punishing me because I've sought out therapy and because I've sought out medical attention and I've actually been given this diagnosis. You're treating me differently versus someone who just hasn't been diagnosed with it yet because they don't have the capacity for whatever reason to be able to go and get medical attention or to go get therapy. And I don't think that that's fair.
Now, what you just said is actually what made me not run. It was the fact that you have a diagnosis and that you are actively in therapy with it that made me go, I can at least see what this is about. Because I'm going to be straight up with you. Had neither one of those two things been present, right? And I can't diagnose you, especially when I didn't know what ADHD was really before 2020. No, 2022,
So like,
2021 ish.
like right when we met.
Yeah, yeah, about 2021, because that's when, because I took a year off the dating market from 2021 to about 2022, and just over a year. And it was because I was meeting people that ADHD this, PTSD that, and I'm like, does everybody have these things, all these alphabet stuff?
Actually, yes, a lot more people have it than are willing to admit for whatever reason. But again, it goes back to access. So, number one, do you have the mental capability to admit that you need help? And then, two, if you are at that point in your life where you can readily admit that you need help, do you have the means by which to get help? Because therapy is a beautiful thing. There are so many people who may want to go to therapy, but they don't have the means. They don't have insurance. They don't have access, or they can't get in touch with their therapist. I have a really good relationship with my therapist where, oh,
Yes,
I was supposed to call him today.
you were.
I was, oops,
It's okay.
ADHD. So see how that's man
Squirrel.
squirrel. But some people don't have that. Like that's not something that every single person has access to. So a lot of things go untreated. And again, that's why I'm like, it's not fair to make that assumption or to make that statement, that generalization, because everyone doesn't have the same access to that type of care and support.
Okay. Pause real quick. I do want to acknowledge Paul Bennett. He said, the bold, beautiful, benevolent. I hate that word. Beneficence. Bald Brotherhood of the BMU Network. The alliteration there is on point.
Right? I love alliteration. You know how I feel about alliteration. It like warms my heart.
And yes, Paul is open to a show in March. Just hit him up to schedule. Perfect. Yeah. If you're not following BMU Network, go check them out. It's a network of people that host different shows around different topics. I find a lot of what they talk about engaging. It's a lot of what people in different socioeconomic statuses are going through now. So I think there's something for everybody depending on who's hosting that day and what their topic is. But hit up BMU Network, that's Black Men Unfiltered Network, to check them out. And it's not just for Black men. I'd say all different races and genders could benefit from something that they offer. So go subscribe to BMU Network and Sparta HQ Network. He's a part of the BMU Network as well. And that's a
non-black person.
That's a non-black person from Greece. Shout out to my pops. Larry Smith is in the building, said, good evening, you guys. Great title. Very interesting. I'm listening now. Educate me. All right, pops. Hey, you know what, Dad? I'm real curious. You don't have to type this in, but on a big scale or a smaller scale, how much do you know about ADHD, right? If you say a little, just put a little. If you know a lot, say a lot. But I'm real curious what your knowledge level is on at least what ADHD is. Because some people have heard it, they don't really know what it's about.
Right. And back in the day, they used to have two different terms. It used to be ADD and then ADHD. And then,
that's right.
Yeah. And then they just got rid of the ADD and said, it's ADHD, but this person presents with hyperactivity, or this person, does not present with hyperactivity. So they just got rid of the plain ADD, and it's just ADHD combined now. And again, it looks different across all spectrums. People are just going to present differently, and that's fine. I'm not a medical expert, but what I am is someone who's been living with it apparently for a really, really long time. And the same thing with PTSD. And I'm only bringing this up because you asked me about my diagnoses. So with the PTSD, I didn't know I had PTSD when I was younger. I knew that there was something wrong. I could very much tell that there was something extremely wrong with me, but no one had flat out said that to me. Was it written in paperwork? Most likely, but no one had ever flat out said it to me. And it wasn't until I saw something, because again, television, I was either watching something or reading something, and they listed one of the symptoms of PTSD as the inability to remember a traumatic moment in your life. or something surrounding a traumatic moment in your life, and they said that that was PTSD. And I remember going back to a therapist, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you have PTSD," and I was like, again, that whole matter of a fact, yeah, you didn't know you did, and I was like, oh, okay, I didn't. So again, that's something else that's common, not common, but people can often have it and not realize that they do, misdiagnoses, stuff like that.
Yep. Now, PTSD isn't just something that you hear and think about with soldiers or people from the military or cops or firefighters. No, the word is post traumatic stress disorder, right? And it's from a traumatic event that has occurred.
Mm-hmm.
So I have diagnosed PTSD. Now, I was in the military, and the job that I did was an in flight refueler. Literal definition of that means I refueled airplanes in the air. And I have experienced death or people that were a part of my job that died. That I didn't get my PTSD diagnosis until well after a good buddy of mine and the crew that he was flying on airplane blew up out of the sky.
Mm-hmm.
That's what caused me to have some what's the word, depression that I was going through, and I didn't know it, and it affected my marriage. So here I was, undiagnosed, having depression, having some PTSD from various things that I lived through from my time in the service. And there's varying levels of that. There's people that have watched somebody get shot right next to them. There is somebody who I transported that was all smiles, but this dude, I did what's called a medevac. And this guy had like burns across 90% of his body. And here he is being cheerful while he's getting medevaced from Korea back to the States so that he could get proper burn care treatment and things like that. And it's funny because my time in the service, I was like, I'm just doing my job.
Yeah.
But then when you actually take the time to stop and think about the things that you've experienced, I've had bullets fly by. I don't talk about that one that often. I have a medal from a mission that happened in which bad things occurred. And I don't talk about it that often because if I talked about it, I think about what occurred during that mission and the fact that I could have gotten shot out the sky and I wouldn't be here now, right? So post-traumatic stress disorder isn't just for people like me. If my daughter gets into a car accident and
God forbid.
for some reason, you know, let's say she lived from that, that's still something that could cause her to have PTSD. I had somebody that I was transporting one time and I forgot what it was that I did. No, I swerved to miss something that was in the road and they did like this and they braced. I felt like it was really unnecessary for what had occurred, but I found out later that they had been in 3 car accidents before.
Yeah, I have been rear-ended 4 times. All of my accidents, thank you Lord, have all been rear end collisions. That's not to say they weren't bad, but that's to say that that's where they were. So I still get really tense now when I'm driving. Like when I am the person behind the wheel and I'm coming up 95 and we're like in that Nova area, I get really, really tense driving because that's where my worst rear end collision occurred and I was by myself at the time, and I get triggered just going in that little corridor because I don't know what's going to happen, and it bothers me. So I get that. I get being triggered by certain things. I get triggered on the 4th of July every single year, and it's something that I typically make a post about every single year on Facebook about the amount of fireworks that go off, because when it continues to go off like throughout the night, that's triggering to me because I hear them, and to me it sounds like gunshots, and it reminds me of my childhood, and I don't feel safe because I am from Baltimore. Like bullets and everything like that, like knowing that you've lost friends because of bullets and the fact that they don't have a name or address on the bullet, like that's still triggering. That is traumatic for me. There are a lot of things that trigger me throughout the course of time, and that's not something to take lightly. And one of the things I remember, I gave an interview because of my sexual assault history about how PTSD is not just for people in the
That's
military.
right. That was fairly recent, right? Within a
Um,
year.
it was no, I think by now it was like 2023, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember when I met with her, but yeah, I did do an interview about that, and that's a fact. Like that's something to realize that it's not just some people associate or assume that only people who have been in combat are the only people who can have experienced some type of trauma that would lead them to having PTSD. But again, one of the core words in PTSD is the trauma. Anyone with trauma can be going through that,
Mm-hmm.
especially if it's still impacting a part of your daily life. And the things that have happened to me still very much impact my daily life.
I know we titled this about ADHD, but I think that this topic right here is really important, specifically around depression and PTSD. I shared with you and everybody just now that depression and PTSD really had a bad effect on my marriage. Can you think of times in your relationship where PTSD or trauma from your past affected a relationship that you were having in a bad way?
Yeah, so actually, I can tie the two of them together. You had asked this question earlier on. Has ADHD ever impacted me in my dating or anything like that? ADHD and PTSD have definitely impacted me. So, one thing about me, and I will link it together, I promise, because I'm good at that.
You have the floor.
One thing about me is with my ADHD, I get bored easily. I can do something for and do something well for a period of time and then internally just get bored because I know it, I can predict it, I know what's going to happen, and I don't deal well in that area. And then with PTSD, I have an issue trusting people. I have strong issues trusting people. Like one thing that I don't think I've ever said publicly, I may have said it privately to people. I, because of what happened to me as a child, I have issues dating or not dating, looking at older black men in the face. Like I have issues making eye contact with older black men, which until I say like saying this now, some people are probably gonna like look back and be like, you know, that's right, she's never made eye contact with me. I struggle to this day, 38 years old, making eye contact with older black men. Especially if there's a bigger gap. Like you're 2 years older than me, but that's not like that type of gap. But I struggle with making eye contact with older black men. I don't date men from Jamaica. And I've flat out said that. I don't date men who are from Jamaica. You having Jamaican heritage is whatever. But I don't date men from Jamaica because the trauma that I received was from a Jamaican man. So I have major trust issues. Those two things, the inability to trust people and the easily bored thing, it has caused me, both of them have caused me to have issues in relationships. It has caused me to think that number one, every guy is going to hurt me, every guy is going to do something that is going to leave me devastated. And then number two, if I am with someone who is not doing those things, then I'm just like, yeah, I'm kind of bored now. And it took a lot of maturing. Like when I say, I think I said something similar to you about this earlier. When I say that you're not only the man that I choose, but you are 1000% the healthiest. This is the healthiest relationship I've ever been in. That is, I like sincerely mean that from the very core part of me because you don't let me walk all over you. You don't let me assert how I may be perceiving something to completely like change and dictate our relationship. You hold me accountable to God, to my therapist, to make sure that I'm doing the things. But I appreciate all of that. And I see like there's so many different components of you that when put with me helps us to be the healthiest relationship I've ever been in.
Okay. I'm gonna come back to that. I do want to acknowledge Kaylee on TikTok. And Kaylee, I apologize that I can't put it up on the screen yet. We haven't gotten that technically capable just yet.
Yet.
But Kaylee sent us a gifter badge on TikTok. That's pretty dope. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.
And also to what you were saying, she said, "Word, sister."
Yeah, like whew, older, like I feel horrible saying that out loud because I know that it was only one black man that physically hurt me. Yet that is the PTSD. I get triggered. I can't, like, I look away. I can't even look my pastors in the eyes. Um, I can't look any man at church in the eyes. And related but not, like, because it's funny how in the church, especially in the black church, it's like, a woman who is unmarried, she has to wear like that lap scarf and everything like that, and she has to sit and be and act a certain way. And I'm like, you legitimately don't have to worry about that with me because I can't even look men in the eye. So I'm not even remotely thinking about that. I look at older men, and a lot of the times I see them through, because we were talking about hearing things through trauma ears before. I see some men today through my trauma, and I'm like, that repulses me in a way that you would never even remotely begin to understand. And that's part of why I get so up in arms when members at my church, have the audacity and the gall to say that I should dress and act a certain way. And I'm just like, you don't know the trauma that I've been through, that I couldn't care less what these people think, that they need to control themselves, and I shouldn't have to be the one who controls myself because y'all can't control yourself.
Okay. I'm thinking about something real quick.
Got it.
But it's unrelated to what you just said. I'm curious to the people that watches this on the replay, or even to the people that are watching live. We're talking about it from the dynamic of our relationship, in which she has diagnosed ADHD, PTSD, depression,
and general anxiety disorder,
GAD. And I'm one that does not have diagnosed PTSD. I've never been diagnosed with ADHD or anything like that. I'm curious for the ladies that are out there. Have you ever been with somebody, if you don't have ADHD, have you had a relationship with somebody that has ADHD? And I'm curious if there's a differences in the genders.
It is. It's a big,
wow.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, it presents differently.
Okay.
Things will look like, you don't see on the offset, people don't see the hyper in me, because I very much do have the hyper. People don't see the hyper in me. I'm older and I'm a woman, so the hyper doesn't present as boldly as it would for like a teenager sitting in my classroom.
Mm-hmm.
I have a teenage boy in my classroom, and he has ADHD. And I remember like talking to his sister, and she was like, like, we were just talking about how I have it and he has it, and she was like, yeah, and that's right, it presents differently. He's very much like, you very much see that hyper component coming out. You don't see my hyper, or you wouldn't perceive my hyper as hyper. You just, as me being an adult, you see it and you're like, oh, she's excited about something. No, that's the hyperactivity. My ability to multitask, that's the hyperactivity coming out. The fact that I do really, really well in secretarial positions, where during the meeting, I remember even with my local chapter of Delta, when I first had the opportunity to do something, I became recording secretary. Of all the positions in that chapter, and it's the only position I would ever want to hold, I was recording secretary, because that means that during the meetings, when I can't be on my cell phone, or I can't sit with a fidget, because back then, like, fidgets weren't like really the thing, I would be typing. I'd be the person typing and taking the minutes of everything, because that is how you would keep my attention. Even now, when I have meetings at church, I self-nominate for recording secretary because I need to type. The typing allows me to not drift off and drain off. And I'll still pay attention. It's just, it looks really, really bad on camera that I'm not paying attention. It looks like I'm not paying attention, but I still pick it up.
Okay. Take a sip of water. I'm going to read through a couple of different comments here.
Go.
So shout out to Larry Smith over on YouTube, said, you know what? When I was driving 18-wheelers a few years ago, you rear-ended. He said, I'm gonna read it how he said it. I rear-ended another 18-wheeler on the Mississippi River Bridge, and I was paranoid. That's why I'm retired now. Absolutely, and congratulations on being retired.
Yeah.
Let's see. Kaylee had a couple of different things that I'm gonna go back to and read. Said that I pronounced her name right. Yes, and I have trust issues too. I told Kaylee thanks for sharing and said, or if there's just a red flag that appears, I just bounce and I think I should steer clear.
Same. So very much. Thank you so much for that, Kaylee. Very, very much. I am the same. I, early on with that dating, I would see something and it's not even like three strikes and you're out, no baseball rules here. It was, if I see one thing, then I'm leaving. And then furthermore, I don't even know what the name of it, what it's called, but I would do something to get the other person to end the relationship because I didn't like being the bad guy.
I used to say this all of the time because I learned what it was when I started seeing ladies. There's a term for it. It's like you don't end it. You take actions to get the other person to go, I can't take this anymore, and get them to leave. There's a term for it. If y'all know what the term is, please put it in the comment section.
Now, I'll be honest, I did that, but it wasn't one of those, oh my gosh, I can't believe he broke up with me type things. It wasn't one of those. It was, oh yeah, we're not together anymore.
Not quite self-sabotage. It's like related to it though. But because somebody put, Kelly put self-sabotage.
I mean, it's a form of, but like that's, you yourself are sabotaging the relationship, yes, but I feel like there's a term for when you do that, and I can't think of what it's called.
Yeah, I used to say the word all the time because I thought it was an interesting phenomenon, and when I learned it, it was like I saw things in color, thinking about times in the past where people did it to me, and I was like, why is this thing just so difficult? Anyway, Kaylee said, that's awesome. I'm glad that you're open about it all. And, I think this is to me. I love how understanding he is and how attentive he is towards you.
He is.
Folks said that about our relationship early on, so much so that people assume that you and I have known each other for a while because this was very early on.
You're my soulmate.
I don't believe in soulmates. But Kaylee, thanks for tuning in, and we appreciate all of the comments. We're live every Monday on a lot of different platforms. Kaylee's watching on TikTok, but we're looking at, trying to get the TikTok up as well. So if you would give us a follow and like what we're talking about, we would definitely love and appreciate it. Thank you.
As someone said, we are MFEO.
Made for each other?
Made for each
other. Yeah.
Embrace it.
Now, what Michelle didn't know until very recently, when I was reading about her and ADHD, I didn't know what it meant to be in a relationship with somebody. So when I was like, all right, so I'm looking at her. I like what I see. She's fine, right? But it ain't all about the fineness. It's like, how are you mentally and things like that. I wasn't sure what it meant to be in a relationship with somebody with ADHD. So I bought books and read up on and watched YouTube channels of being in a relationship with people with ADHD. Now, you want to hear something interesting?
I'm so here for it.
On YouTube, you can find plenty of people where it's just one person and they're the one with ADHD and they're talking about their relationships or the current person that they're with and things like that. I don't think I found one, and I sought this out, where it was a couple talking about how it was for them both. So that's rare. So I don't know if we're one of the first. I'm pretty sure all of the different channels and stuff that's on YouTube that other people have, but we might be the first that both of us are sitting up here being vulnerable and, sharing what we think about, it all. I wasn't nervous when I found out about you. There was some stuff in the books that made me curious that I said, well, if I see this, I don't know if this can work for me.
Like what?
So it talked about being hyper-focused on something. And
no, that's actually you. That's not me.
Well, But I was curious, like, how much would that throw you off if I'm trying to maybe steer the ship this way, but you're intent on turning your oar so that the ship or the part of the ship that you're on goes here? I was kind of concerned about, well, how can we get on like the same page about something important if she gets hyper focused on something that I might not think's a big deal, or if I'm going to be the leader, but you see something and I'm like, babe, that's just wrong. Would you be able to get past it or not? And I wasn't quite sure how that would work out.
It's funny because I'm not going to say I completely don't hyper focus on things, but not in the way that I hear it that way. So I wouldn't say I hyper focus on things, but I will say that sometimes my memory kicks in and it's that of an elephant. So I will recall something that happens, and until it's addressed between the two of us, it does sit in like um burrow a hole within me and continue to like send me down in like deeper thoughts of over analyzing and stuff like that.
Yes.
But I wouldn't say I'm hyper focused on that
Okay.
because I'm still able to do other things. However, I will say that you literally get hyper focused on something. Like you will have
Yes.
tunnel vision about something and there's no changing you. So you use the example like if you're trying to steer a ship one way, will me being hyper focused on something cause me to like have my oars going in a different direction? And I would say that's not me. What I am is someone who needs to know when change is coming. I adapt well to change when I know it's coming. I don't adapt well to abrupt change. That is not something with all of my diagnoses that works out well. I'm definitely one of those people that you should be like, okay, Michelle, next week we're going to do X, Y, and Z, or something like that. Or if we have something planned out, as soon as you know that it's going to change, you should let me know that so that I can have time to adjust.
Oh,
Because
I've learned this one. Yeah.
wow, because otherwise like I don't respond well. And I'm also one of those, if you say you're going to do something at a certain time, definitely do it, because to me my mind perceives not doing it as change, and I struggle to accept and adapt to that. But am I someone who's spontaneous? Yes. Like, however, I'm a planned spontaneous person. So I'm one of those people who's like, well, today I'm just going to go with the wind and see what happens, right? Versus me being in the moment and be like, okay, let's just see what happens. Like, that's not me. I'm one of those, I need to plan my spontaneity, which I get it does not sound all that appealing, but that is who I am. I need to plan my spontaneity.
Okay. We got a couple other comments I want to acknowledge. We got Tay Tay White over on Facebook said, Chef's Nyla. What is that in response to? Is that in reply to Cooking with Kaya, or is Chef's Nyla two chefs that one has ADHD and the other one doesn't? If you could elaborate on that, Tay Tay White, we would appreciate it. Over on TikTok, Kaylee said, I have shared with my active peers. Thank you. Thank you. Said that shared the live stream with the peers.
Oh,
and we
thank you.
got 2.5K likes over on TikTok.
Ooh.
That is dope.
Awesome.
Larry said, hey, Michelle, that was a very powerful statement you made. WWM.
We were made for each other.
Shout out to Michael Carroll Squillo, said, hey, y'all. Yo, what up, CQ? Thanks for letting me use your Studio C last night.
We renamed it to Studio C.
We almost had to do Studio C here if the power was still out in our neighborhood.
But because my soror lives down the street, I knew when your power had gotten restored.
No doubt, no doubt. We got to make sure that we follow Kaylee.
Yes.
We got to follow Kaylee.
Oh, I can do it from this phone.
Kaylee is awesome. We are at time, though.
Aww.
What I want to end up with is this. If you, and I'm speaking specifically to the men, if you are a man that is interested in being in a relationship with somebody that has diagnosed ADHD, PTSD, and things like that, I encourage you to do two things. A, communicate directly with the person that you're being in a relationship with.
Always.
And to be honest with you, so I'm 40 years old, there's no dumb question to bring up or ask if you're not sure about something.
Mm-hmm.
Have the confidence enough to ask and cross your fingers that they will respect you for asking the question instead of assuming or just thinking about it, but no, trying to go maybe I don't want to offend the person. I'm telling you, you can go a long way just by asking the person, well, what does this mean? Tell me how this affects you, right? So that it can help you communicate, and hopefully if y'all are aligned with what y'all want to do and how y'all want the relationship to go, having that knowledge can make things work out. So A, communicate, and B, take the time to do some research separate from them.
Of course. So I will always say this, and I ended up writing a blog about it years ago. I will forever appreciate the fact that when you had just heard my name, you went and you did research on me. You went, you looked through and read all of my blogs, which at the time was just over 400, because I'd been writing it for years. Like, my ministry started in 2017. You met me in 2022. You went and read all the blogs in between there. So I am forever grateful for that. But you ask questions. If you don't understand something, you ask questions. And I don't hate you or the questions that you ask. I appreciate them, because sometimes the questions I'll readily have an answer to, and then other times I have to be introspective with it. I have to look deeper, dig deeper to find out, like, why am I doing such a thing? Some things I have to take to my therapist, and I'm like, hey, let's have this conversation. Some things I got to take to God, like, hey, let's have this conversation. But your questions make for a better me. So I am very much appreciative of that. But it took a while to get here. And I said that I was not like this with my exes. And I don't know if it was them or if it was me, but I'm going to say that because it takes two people to be in a relationship, it was both of us. We both weren't the people that you and I are, which is what makes the two of us work well together. You ask those questions. You're not afraid to ask those questions. I'll answer them. Aside from something that's like a surprise gift, I don't keep any secrets from you. I don't mind sharing anything. And I laugh because of the whole like cell phone conversation upstairs. But I don't mind sharing and inviting you into everything, because the way I look at it, the more you know, the better you can make an informed decision about how to proceed.
Yes.
Oh, it's like I listen to you sometimes.
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 I'll take that.
Okay. So, that's how I view things. It's only for our good when I continue to let you, be inquisitive. I don't mind. It makes a stronger relationship for the two of us.
No doubt. No doubt. Now, if y'all want to add something to the conversation on the replay gang or anything like that, whatever platform that you catch the replay on, please put it in the comment section. Let's open up and let's have the discussion to demystify what some of these words mean out there. Again, we're not experts or anything like that. We're sharing our lives very publicly, by the way, and talking about how it's impacted us and things that we've observed, not just between ourselves, but with other people as well. So maybe something that you've gone through and that you've experienced can help somebody as well. So if you have something to add, put it in the comment section. We would love to read it ourselves, and maybe it'll help somebody else that's out there.
The one thing I'll say about dating someone with ADHD is that you have to be honest, you have to be authentic and open with that person, and continue to share and allow them to be that way as well. Like, create that safe and, well, excuse me, we try not to say safe space. Create that brave space for someone where they can be their best selves and their most authentic self, because that is what's going to allow someone to feel comfortable to kind of let some of those guards down. Are there some things that just medically don't change about me? Yeah, but because I do feel safe in our relationship and safe in the space where we are, I am able to be the woman that I need to be, the person that I need to be, and to thrive. And I think that that's something that people forget. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're dating someone with a diagnosis or not. you have to create a space where that person can be their best self, not themselves, but their best self. What that version of them looks like, that thriving, surviving version. I remember one of my line sisters said something to me years ago, like when we first met, and I'm about to be 14 in Delta. Years ago, when we first met, I remember telling her, because I had business cards from when I had started my ministry back in 2017. And on my business card, it said sexual assault survivor, or what the other word survivor on there. And I remember her flat out saying to me that I should not be a survivor. I should be a thriver. And I remember being so offended because I was hearing it through her ears at the point. The difference between a survivor and a thriver is, a survivor is someone who has had something happen to them and they're essentially just surviving through what has happened to them. A thriver is someone who has taken that experience, learned from it, and not allowing that pain to continue to dictate and rule their lives anymore. And that is where I had to shift to. So even with all of the diagnosis, the PTSD, the depression, the ADHD, all of those things, and anxiety, I couldn't allow them to control my life anymore. I had to get to the point where I started doing things through a healed lens, hearing things with healed ears, and being able to move forward. So to move from that survivor of childhood assault to the point where I am a thriving adult. For me, it took a good span of years. For others, it may take less. For others, it may take more. But you have to be that in your relationship. You have to be thriving. Get out of survivor mode and get into thriving mode, and be willing to do what it takes to heal. What were you about to say?
I am a thriver. I am gonna make it. We are some thrivers. All right, y'all. Y'all know I will find something to crack a
He
joke on.
will.
No,
Oh, goodness.
that was solid information. So thanks for sharing that.
Of course.
All right, let's check and see if we have some comments, and then we have to close out the show as we both got jobs to get to tomorrow. So no comments over on YouTube or Facebook.
No,
Let's
but your mom
see.
did pop in.
We do have a couple of. We also had a celebrity, Free T, popped in. She ain't say nothing, but TikTok be snitching.
TikTok will snitch on you.
Kaylee said, "Did I arrive late?" And I think that that's awesome to share. Then others can relate and grow too. Yeah. So we go live every Monday at 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern Standard Time Zone. So no matter where you are in the world, if you know what Eastern Standard Time Zone is, that's when we be live. We hadn't missed the Monday where we've been live. I think we had one or two in 2024.
We've had one Miss Monday. One.
In almost a year and a half.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah. So we've been pretty good about that. Let's see. We have Lichmaster also gave a gifter badge as well. Hey, to like the Lich King from World of Warcraft. I play WoW. People don't know this. But also gave a gift badge as well. So thank you. Right? We appreciate that. This is one of Kelly's friends said, "Welcome, friend. I shared this with you because they're awesome and sharing their life is like a podcast." And Lichmaster responded back, said, "I'm listening and it's awesome." Thank y'all
you.
both.
Yeah.
That's dope.
And Kaylee, we did go, so I went from our page, but we did go and follow Kaylee.
So.
Thank you.
We're fairly new to doing this live on TikTok, so to see this kind of response over here, it's pretty dope. I'm telling y'all, like y'all done made my night. So thank you. To everybody else that's tuned in, we appreciate y'all tuning in. If there's a like button on your platform, do us a favor, hit that like button. If I'm looking at our calendar here, we have one more Monday in February.
One more.
Before we turn the page. So we'll be back next Friday, next Monday, same bat time, same bat channel. We put clips on our other platforms as well. So if you're not following us on Instagram, LinkedIn, to TikTok, YouTube, and all of that jazz, I feel like I'm missing one.
We have a Twitter. I don't know how much we use.
It is on Twitter. Yes, X. We are on there as well. So if you use those platforms, check us out over there as well. And we have an audio podcast.
We do.
So,
that.
We don't talk about that. We're on Spotify,
Spotify.
Google, and Apple, and all of the other major ones.
Yeah.
If you follow our audio only podcast, we put exclusives out over there.
We do.
So
we should do another one soon.
Yeah, we should. We got some things coming up. Mustard. All right, y'all.
Sorry. I don't, it just,
we got to get you
there.
home.
Okay.
So we got work and all the other things. Thank y'all for tuning in. That's Michelle. I'm King. If you're new to our show, we end it a certain way.
Every single time.
Every single time. I came, you came.
I came the 1 week when you were still healing.
Come to me.
Okay.
All right.
Mwah.
Bye, y'all.
Everyone.
Peace.